Hello and welcome to a lesson on social influence. This is the specification number 8 and it's called resistance to social influence. So on the specification it identifies two reasons that we can resist social influence, and the reasons that we can resist the pressure to either conform or obey are due. The first one is because of social support, and the second one is because of something called locus of control. So in the exam, if there was a long essay that said outline and evaluate explanations for resistance to social influence, then the entire essay is going to be based on you talking about when people have social support, they can resist pressure, and when people have well, you'll find out it's called an internal locus of control, they can also resist pressure that we feel. In resistance to social influence, we can talk about resisting the pressure to obey and conform. So far we have been separating conformity and obedience, and we know that people like Ash investigated conformity and that Milgram investigated obedience, and you know the difference between conformity and obedience. In this lesson we're talking about how anyone can resist the pressure to conform or obey. So it doesn't matter if you bring in both of those examples into this lesson. How do we resist the pressure of social influence? And so you can talk about conformity or obedience. So the first one, social support, is actually quite easy because we've done all the work for this already. So pause the video and just make a note. What happened in the Ash variation called unanimity to the majority? And then pause the video again and write down what happened in Milgram's variation called the two rebels study. What happened then? So hopefully you've identified that in the Ash variation called unanimity to the majority, that when there was a lone dissenter, so that means when there was somebody that went against the majority, then that gave the participant the psychological power to resist the urge to conform. And so if the person gave the correct answer, if the lone dissenter gave the correct answer, we saw conformity drop to 5.5%. If the person gave a different incorrect answer, then we saw conformity drop to 9%. And so that's why Ash concluded that it was the breaking the unanimity of the majority that helped people resist the pressure to conform. And so that means the person who broke the unanimity was offering the real participant social support. So we'll often refer to that person as an ally because that means somebody who's on your side. And so we saw conformity plummet in that instance. And in the Milgram variation called the two rebels study, it was the same kind of idea that the real participant had two people either side of them who resisted the pressure to obey the experimenter. And when the real participant had the presence of allies, when they had the two rebels who went against the experimenter, we saw obedience plummet all the way to 10%, which was the lowest percentage of all the variations. So again, when you've got social support, when you've got somebody on your side, then you're less likely to conform and you're less likely to obey. So, as it says here, both these variations show us that when we have the social support, then we can resist social influence. We won't conform and we won't obey. And this is a bar chart of some of Milgram's variations, just to highlight to you that Milgram changed a lot of variations. We can see the rundown office and the proximity study, but it was the two rebel study which made the obedience drop to 10%. It was when you have social support that we see the most amount of resistance to obey. So let's do a bit of research methodology practice. Could you pause the video and write a directional hypothesis for both the Ash variation and the Milgram variation that demonstrates social support? And I've given you the IV and DV for both, so you remember you would begin your hypothesis participants who, and then go IV, DV, IV. Pause the video and then start again. Oh, hello. Oh, really sorry, but it has flicked through the slide where I actually wrote the hypotheses for you. So I'll just tell you them. So participants who have a presence of an ally will conform on less trials than participants who don't have the presence of an ally. That was for Ash. And for Milgram, participants who have two rebels as an ally in the Milgram experiment will give less voltage to the learner than participants who don't have two rebels acting as an ally. So hopefully you've got those correct. What I'd like to do now is pause the video again, and I want you to write 2 short paragraphs to explain how social support gives people the psychological power to resist social influence. Now, these paragraphs make up all of the AO1 description for a 12-marker essay. So remember, in a 12-marker, it's 6 marks AO1 and 6 marks AO3 evaluation. So I want you to start each paragraph the same way. This is for your AO1. So paragraph 1, social support gives us psychological power to resist conformity to the majority. This was demonstrated in Ash's variation, and then explain about the lone dissenter study, give those percentages. The next paragraph, social support also gives us the power to resist obedience. This was demonstrated in Milgram's variation, and then explain about the two rebels study. And if you do those short paragraphs, each paragraph is worth 3 marks, and that is the beginning of a 12-marker essay. If it came up in the exam, that's exactly what you would need to write to get the full 6 marks. Of course, in the exam you might get a short answer question on this, so it's really good practice to do this. Anyway, okay, so resistance to social influence. The first explanation, as I said, is social support, and that means that when you're in a particular situation, if you've got presence of allies, if you've got people on your side, you will not conform, you will not obey. The second explanation is about who you are as a person. It's about your personality. So some people have a personality which means that they are much more likely to resist social influence like obedience and conformity. And I have asked everybody to complete Rotter's Locus of Control psychological personality test. So if you haven't done it yet, then check your emails, because I sent you an email with it attached, or look on the files of MS Teams under social influence and look for SP09 and do the locus of control test. And when you do it, it will give you a score, and you will either come out as more of an internal locus of control or as an external locus of control. So if you look at the picture here, you can see this guy here smoking. Bad news, don't smoke. This was a long time ago. This is Rotter, and he devised the questionnaire to identify your locus of control. And he said that if you come out as an internal locus of control, then you are much more likely to resist social influence. So if you have an internal locus of control, then you believe that you control the consequences of your behaviour. If you have an external locus of control, this means you are much more likely to succumb to the pressure to conform and obey, that you won't resist social influence because you believe the consequences of your behaviour are outside of your control. So an internal locus of control, Rotter believes that these people have better academic achievement, better interpersonal relationships, which means they get on better with people. They have more effort to learn, they have a positive attitude to exercise, they are lower cigarette smoking, which is a bit rich, isn't it, seeing as he's there smoking a pipe, and they have lower hypertension, which means blood pressure, and lower amount of heart attacks, which is a physical health thing going on. So if you have an internal locus of control, then you are going to resist social influence. An external locus of control, Rotter says these people are more resigned to conditions as they are. So if something occurs, they just kind of give up and think, oh, well, that's happened and I can't do anything about it. They have lower efforts to deal with their own health. They have lower levels of psychological adjustment, which means that if a new situation occurs, they find it very hard to adjust to coping with that new situation. For example, if your teacher is away because supposing they've got a bad back like I do today and they can't attend lesson, they can't attend college, they might send you a video to watch. And so someone with an external locus of control would think, oh, well, the teacher isn't there, so I just won't bother. Whereas somebody with an internal locus of control will think, well, the teacher isn't there, but they've sent me a video to watch. I'll watch that and I'll learn as best I can. If I don't understand, I can ask questions. So, but somebody with an external locus of control will actually have a greater sense of satisfaction when they do things, probably because they don't usually take responsibility for their actions. So you will have taken the locus of control. Now, if you came out as quite high external, don't worry about that, because Rotter acknowledged that younger people tend to have more of an external locus of control because they don't have as much control in their lives. For example, young people often don't have a full-time job with a salary, so therefore they have less financial control over their lives. They are more dependent on other people. So Rotter did acknowledge that some people might become more internal as they get older. But he said actually a lot of it is about your personality. Some people have this internal locus of control where they feel very confident and sure of themselves, and so it goes hand in hand that they are less likely to succumb to social influence. They're more likely to resist social influence and not obey and not conform because they're more sure of themselves. So locus of control research has uncovered a number of characteristics that are relevant for the resistance to social influence. So if you have a look on MS Teams and look for handout SP31, you can have a look at that, and what I want you to do, either by yourself or chat to someone else on MS Teams or ring them up, I want you to explain why each of the points on these characteristics mean you're likely to resist social pressure. So this is what the handout looks like. It's called the 3 A's. People who are high internals have characteristics called the 3 A's. They are active seekers of information, they are achievement orientated, and they are able to resist coercion from others. So pause the video and really have a think, dig deep. Why is it that if you're an active seeker of information, you're less likely to conform or obey? Why is it if you're achievement orientated, you are less likely to conform or obey? Why is it if you are able to resist coercion from others that you are less likely to conform or obey? Coercion, by the way, means that you can be influenced by other people to do something when they put pressure on you. So if I was going to coerce somebody, then I would be telling them to do something and I would be threatening them if they didn't. So, for example, I would never do this ever, but supposing I said to somebody, I want you to go to Spa and I want you to go and steal some jammy Dodgers. And if you don't do it, I'm going to make sure you fail your AS level. That's coercion. So somebody with an external locus of control would just go, okay, I'll do it. But something going on in the background. Somebody with an internal locus of control would be able to resist that coercion. They would still stand up to the person. So pause the video and identify why people will resist coercion. Pause the video and think about those 3 A's. Why are people going to resist that social influence, those 3 things, if they're internal? So a couple of ideas for you. If you're an active seeker of information, then you're less likely to rely on the opinions of others. So supposing someone's trying to get you to obey an order or trying to tell you to do something, or everyone else is doing something, like for peer pressure, you would actively seek out the real objective information about that, and so you're less likely to conform and obey. For achievement orientated, if you are achievement orientated and get really good qualifications, you're more likely to become a leader and an entrepreneur. So you're more likely to be the person in charge giving those orders, and you're certainly not going to follow what other people are doing. If you are able to resist coercion, that means you're much less likely to be involved in criminal activity. If you can stand up to other people, then even if they're threatening you, you can say, no, I'm not doing it. And so people who are internal have those 3 characteristics, the 3 A's. Okay, so evaluation. I'm just going to explain one evaluation point to you, and then I'm going to give you a task for the other evaluation points. So the first evaluation point this discussion point. Whenever we talk about evaluation, we are discussing the theory. And in this case, we're discussing the theory of locus of control and of social support. And this is discussing the theory of locus of control. And a psychologist called Twenge in 2004 did a meta-analysis. Now, we haven't come across those yet. A meta-analysis is a study of studies. So Twenge and his team or her team would have looked at a lot of studies about the locus of control and come to some conclusions from that. So the meta-analysis looked at locus of control studies between 1960 and 2002, and they found that locus of control has become substantially more external in student and child samples in America, meaning that young Americans are increasingly believing that their lives are controlled by other outside forces rather than their own behaviour. And this evaluation point, this discussion point, is acknowledging that this meta-analysis has found that in society, young people are becoming more external than they used to be. And so the reason for that, like why would that be? Why are people becoming more external? Why are people thinking they can't control the consequences of their behaviour? Why are they not able to resist coercion? So Twenge identified it was the increase in rises in divorce rates and violent crimes, mental health and suicide that was causing this into more external locus of control. So pause the video and think, well, why is it that increasing divorce rates, increasing crime rates, why would that cause people to have more external locus of control? So hopefully you've had a think about that, and it's because people have no control over those things in their lives. If you're a young person and your parents are getting divorced, you might not want them to, and parents are likely to say, we're really sorry that you don't want us to get divorced, but unfortunately we are going to get divorced and we can't make this work. And so therefore the young person is powerless in that situation. And if you think about crime, supposing you've got this plan to get super fit and be active in your community, and you want to cycle to college every day, and that means you're kind of taking responsibility for your health and you're being good for the environment. But then supposing somebody steals your bike, you have no control over that situation. It will make you feel hopeless and powerless, and it will take away your ability to be an internal. So that's why Twenge said that that young Americans are becoming more external. So that's the first evaluation point. What I would like you to do for the rest of the evaluation points is either individual work or some pairs work. And I would like you to, I'm just going to do this, Edward, and then Elf on the Shelf was in William's trousers. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Right, I'll just be a minute, all right? Okay, sorry about that. So the rest of the evaluation is to either by yourself, you can do all 5 evaluations if you want, but I don't recommend that. I recommend you pick one of the evaluations and then find some other people to pick other ones. So liaise with other people in your class. And I would like you to take one of the evaluation points that's on page 31 of your textbook. I think it's page 31. I haven't got a textbook with me. You'll know if it's page 31 because it will say resistance to social influence. And then I would like you to create a colourful A4 mini poster to describe one of the evaluation points. I want you to create a memory peg for that research. So maybe a picture or a rhyme or a story to link that researcher to the point, and so that it will help people remember the evaluation. Write it in your own words. Don't just copy out the evaluation point from the book, but really think about the evaluation point and put it in your own words, and if you can, give an example. And then when you've done that, I've put here to present the findings to the rest of the group, but because of COVID, we're not doing presentations at the moment. So once you've done it, we will think of a way for you to present that information. It might be, well, I will think about that. And then what will happen is I will take them all in, and after 72 hours of not touching them, I will then photocopy all of the evaluation points into a set of evaluation points for each person. If you are interested in this, if you want to do a bit more work, you can do stretch and challenge, which is optional. You can search the media to find real examples of people resisting social influence. That's for a different thing, but I will do. Thank you, William. You can think about factors that signify resistance or social influence, like the 3 A's, and your examples can be from today or history or popular culture or anything. So if you do that, if you actually look at people who can resist social influence, people who stand up against the majority, people who resist the pressure to obey from real life, that will really help cement it in your mind and give you some good examples as well. I will put the directed study onto MS Teams, and I will put the deadlines on as well. If you have any questions, obviously send me an email or put a chat on MS Teams. Thank you.